Hi, I'm Rashonda Cade. This is Reading with Rashonda. We are reading Behind the Scenes by Elizabeth Keckley. We are on chapter 3. Chapter 3 is like 20 pages long, which is about twice as much as we typically read in a session. Maybe we'll make it through the whole thing, maybe we won't. I don't know. Let's get started. Chapter 3, How I Gained My Freedom. The years passed and brought many changes to me, but on these I will not dwell, as I wish to hasten to the most interesting part of my story. My troubles, she says the most interesting part of her story, but so far her story has been pretty interesting. Anyway. My troubles in North Carolina were brought to an end by my unexpected return to Virginia, where I lived with Mr. Garland, who had married Miss Anne Burwell, one of my old master's daughters. His life was not a prosperous one, and after struggling with the world for several years, he left his native state a disappointed man. He moved to St. Louis. Woo woo, I'm in St. Louis. He moved to St. Louis, hoping to improve his fortune in the West. Now, today, we typically don't think about St. Louis as West, but back then, St. Louis was totally West. We have the Gateway Arch in St. Louis, which is the tallest monument in the United States, by the way, and it is the gateway to the West. And at the bottom of the Gateway Arch is a fantastic museum of westward expansion. Come to St. Louis, check it out, go up into the arch because the ride up to the arch is fun and the view is phenomenal from the top of the arch. But anyway, St. Louis used to be West. Now it's Midwest, but it was West back in the day. So anyway, he moved to St. Louis hoping to improve his fortune in the West, but ill luck followed him there, and he seemed to be unable to escape from the influence of the evil star of his destiny. When his family, myself included, joined him in his new home on the banks of the Mississippi, we found him so poor that he was unable to pay the dues on a letter advertised as in the post office for him. Excuse me. The necessities of the family were so great that it was proposed to place my mother out at service. The idea was shocking to me. Every gray hair in her old head was dear to me, and I could not bear the thought of her going to work for strangers. She had been raised in the family, had watched the growth of each child from infancy to maturity. They had been the objects of her kindest care, and she was wound round about them as the vine winds itself about the rugged oak. She's saying her mom was a member of the family, but they're going to let her out to somebody else's family. You know why? Because she was a slave. And as such, she was an object that can be bought and sold or rented or anything. Rankles, doesn't it? They had been the central figures in her dream of life, a dream beautiful to her since she had basked in the sunshine of no other. Oh, wow. They had been the central figures in her dream of life, a dream beautiful to her since she had basked in the sunshine of no other. Basically, it was the only life she knew. So it was the life of her dreams because she didn't know of any other sort of life. Hang on a second. I'm turning on my space heater over here. I got kind of cold. All right. And now they propose to destroy each tendril of affection, to cloud the sunshine of her existence when the day was drawing to a close, when the shadows of solemn night were rapidly approaching. My mother, my poor aged mother, go among strangers to toil for a living? No, 1,000 times no. I would rather work my fingers to the bone, bend over my sewing till the film of blindness gathered in my eyes, nay, even beg from the street. I told Mr. Garland so, and he gave me permission to see what I could do. I was fortunate in obtaining work, and in a short time I had acquired something of a reputation as a seamstress and dressmaker. The best ladies in St. Louis were my patrons, and when my reputation was once established, I never lacked for orders. Clearly, now I need to go and look and see who her patrons were in St. Louis. This is my town. I'm interested and excited. While I was working so hard that others might live in comparative comfort and move in those circles of society to which their birth gave them entrance, the thought often occurred to me whether I was really worth my salt or not. And then perhaps the lips curled with a bitter sneer. It may seem strange that I should place so much emphasis upon words thoughtlessly, idly spoken. But then we do many strange things in life and cannot always explain the motives that actuate us. The heavy task was too much for me, and my health began to give way. About this time, Mr. Keckley, ooh, Mr. Keckley, because we know her last name is Keckley now. Hmm. About this time, Mr. Keckley, whom I had met in Virginia and learned to regard with more than friendship, came to St. Louis. He sought my hand in marriage. And for a long time, I refused to consider his proposal, for I could not bear the thought of bringing children into slavery, of adding one single recruit to the million bound to hopeless servitude. Fettered and shackled with chains stronger and heavier than manacles of iron. Wow. She said, I do not want to get married because I am not bringing a child into slavery. And then the description of adding one single recruit to the millions bound to hopeless servitude, fettered and shackled with chains stronger and heavier than manacles of iron. Wow. I made a proposition to buy myself and son. The proposition was bluntly declined, and I was commanded never to broach the subject again. So she's out. She's making money for the family. She's making enough money that her mom doesn't have to get let out. A man wants to marry her, and she was like, can I buy out my freedom for myself and my son? And they were like, no, no. Why? Because she was way too lucrative for them. But we are talking about Elizabeth Keckley, who has already shown us who she is. So let's see what she does. I would not be put off thus. See? I would not be put off thus, for hope pointed to a freer, brighter life in the future. Why should my son be held in slavery? I often asked myself. He came into the world through no will of mine, and yet God only knows how I loved him. The Anglo-Saxon blood as well as the African flowed in his veins. The two currents commingled, one singing of freedom, the other silent and sullen with generations of despair. Why should not the Anglo-Saxon triumph? Why should it be weighed down with the rich blood typical of the tropics? That is an interesting argument. She is like, he's half white. Why shouldn't his half white part get him his freedom? And is in a very bizarre move that, I mean, makes total sense for slaveholders. Children followed the state of their mother. So if their mother was a slave, they would be a slave, which allowed free white men to get all sorts of slave women pregnant because they didn't have to call any of the offspring their children. And then they wouldn't be free, even though it was far more typical for a child to follow the status of their father rather than their mother. Why should not the Anglo-Saxon triumph? Why should it be weighed down with the rich blood typical of the tropics? Must the life current of one race bind the other race in chains as strong and enduring as if there had been no Anglo-Saxon taint? I've wondered that too, but it's fantastic how she's saying the taint is the Anglo-Saxon blood in her son, because really anything that you read, it's going to say the taint was the black blood. And that's where we get the one drop rule from. If there is one drop of black blood in somebody, then, oh no, they're a black person. And she's like, let's flip that. If there's one drop of white blood, then they're a white person and they get all the stuff that white people get. Elizabeth Keckley, I am down with you. By the laws of God and nature, as interpreted by man, one half of my boy was free, and why should not this fair birthright of freedom remove the curse from the other half, raise it into the bright, joyous sunshine of liberty? And I've wondered that too, like if being white is so incredible and amazing, why is it that the white blood in somebody who is biracial doesn't trump the black blood? Like, I've never understood that in these arguments. And apparently my friend Elizabeth, because she's my friend now, my friend Elizabeth Keckley doesn't understand either. I could not answer these questions of my heart that almost maddened me, and I learned to regard human philosophy with distrust. Much as I respected the authority of my master, I could not remain silent on a subject that so nearly concerned me. One day, when I insisted on knowing whether he would permit me to purchase myself and what price I must pay for myself, listen to that language, will you allow me to purchase myself? What price must I pay to purchase myself? Oh, he turned to me in a petulant manner, thrust his hand into his pocket, drew forth a bright silver quarter of a dollar, and proffering it to me, said, Lizzie, I have told you often not to trouble me with such a question. If you really wish to leave me, take this. It will pay the passage of yourself and boy on the ferry boat, and when you are on the other side of the river, you will be free. It is the cheapest way that I know of to accomplish what you desire. I would have been like, Blink, thanks, we're out. I looked at him in astonishment and earnestly replied, No, master, I do not wish to be free in such a manner. If such had been my wish, I should never have troubled you about obtaining your consent to my purchasing myself. I can cross the river any day, as you well know, and have frequently done so, but will never leave you in such a manner. Wow, she is a better person than I am, because I would have been like, You're going to pay for me to escape from you? Done. But then that does leave your escape hanging over you for the whole rest of your life, and your master always able to come back and search for you because there are no free papers. There has been no payment. She's smart and a good human. By the laws of the land, I am your slave. You are my master, and I will only be free by such means as the laws of the country provide. He expected this answer, and I knew that he was pleased. Some time afterwards, he told me that he had reconsidered the question, that I had served his family faithfully, that I deserved my freedom, and that he would take $1,200 for myself and the boy. This was joyful intelligence for me, and the reflection of hope gave a silver lining to the dark cloud of my life. Faint, it is true, but still a silver lining. Now, I'm wondering, is he going to double cross her? Taking a prospective glance at Liberty, I consented to marry. Aw, she was like, I'm going to be free. Let's get married, Mr. Keckley. The wedding was a great event in the family. The ceremony took place in the parlor in the presence of the family and a number of guests. Mr. Garland gave me away, and the pastor, Bishop Hawks, performed the ceremony, who had solemnized the bridals of Mr. G's own children. Now, this is really interesting that she's having this whole lavish wedding because slaves weren't allowed to get married. I have questions about Mr. Keckley. I'll assume they'll be answered, though. The day was a happy one, but it faded all too soon. Mr. Keckley, let me speak kindly of his faults, proved dissipated and a burden instead of a helpmate. More than all, I learned that he was a slave instead of a free man, as he represented himself to be. Oh my gosh. So he was a burden and a liar. He said he was free and he was not. With the simple explanation that I lived with him 8 years, let charity draw around him the mantle of silence. She's like, I was married to this man for 8 years. He was a no good scoundrel, but I'm going to be quiet about it. I went to work in earnest to purchase my freedom, but the years passed, and I was still a slave. Mr. Garland's family claimed so much of my attention, in fact, I supported them, that I was not able to accumulate anything. I am sure that is by design of the Garland family. Yeah, you can purchase yourself and your son for $1,200, but we will make it impossible for you to earn the $1,200 with which to purchase yourself. In the meantime, Mr. Garland died, and Mr. Burwell, a Mississippi planter, came to St. Louis to settle up the estate. He was a kind-hearted man and said I should be free and would afford me every facility to raise the necessary amount to pay the price of my liberty. Several schemes were urged upon me by my friends. At last, I formed a resolution to go to New York, state my case, and appeal to the benevolence of the people. Go to New York, state your case, and appeal to the benevolence of the people. Where in New York? What people? How do you know they're benevolent? It sounds to me like she's planning on going on the circuit that many escaped slaves, many might be overstating it, but that escaped slaves would sometimes go on, and they would go on a circuit and they would make speeches and people would read their books and they would promote abolitionism. It sounds like that's what she's saying. I'm intrigued. The plan seemed feasible, and I made preparations to carry it out. When I was almost ready to turn my face northward, Mrs. Garland told me that she would require the names of 6 gentlemen who would vouch for my return and become responsible for the amount at which I was valued. I had many friends in St. Louis, and as I believed that they had confidence in me, I felt that I could readily obtain the names desired. I started out, stated my case, and obtained 5 signatures to the paper, but my heart throbbed with pleasure, for I did not believe that the sixth would refuse me. I called. He listened patiently, then remarked, "Yes, yes, Lizzie, the scheme is a fair one, and you shall have my name, but I shall bid you good-bye when you start." "Good-bye for a short time," I ventured to add. "No, good-bye for all time." And he looked at me as if he would read my very soul with his eyes. I was startled. "What do you mean, Mr. Farrow? Surely you do not think that I do not mean to come back?" "No." "No? What then?" "Simply this. You mean to come back. That is, you mean so now, but you never will. When you reach New York, the abolitionists will tell you what savages we are, and they will prevail on you to stay there, and we shall never see you again." "But I assure you, Mr. Farrow, you are mistaken. I not only mean to come back, but will come back and pay every cent of the $1,200 for myself and child." I was beginning to feel sick at heart, for I could not accept the signature of this man when he had no faith in my pledges. No, slavery, eternal slavery, rather than be regarded with distrust by those whose respect I esteemed. Wow. She was like, if you don't trust my word, that's not cool. Wow. "But I am not mistaken," he persisted. "Time will show. When you start for the North, I shall bid you good-bye." The heart grew heavy. Every ray of sunshine was eclipsed. With humble pride, weary step, tearful face, and a dull, aching pain, I left the house. I walked along the street mechanically. The cloud had no silver lining now. The rosebuds of hope had withered and died without lifting up their heads to receive the dew kiss of morning. There was no morning for me. All was night, dark night. I reached my home, and weeping threw myself upon the bed. My trunk was packed. My luncheon was prepared by mother. The cars were ready to bear me where I would not hear the clank of chains, where I would breathe the free, invigorating breezes of the glorious North. I had dreamed such a happy dream. In imagination had drunk of the water, the pure, sweet crystal water of life. But now, the flowers had withered before my eyes. Darkness had settled down upon me like a pall, and I was left alone with cruel, mocking shadows. The first paroxysm of grief was scarcely over when a carriage stopped in front of the house. Mrs. Le Bourgeois, one of my kind patrons, got out of it and entered the door. She seemed to bring sunshine with her handsome, cheery face. She came to where I was, and in her sweet way said, "Lizzie, I hear that you are going to New York to beg for money to buy your freedom. I have been thinking over the matter, and told Ma it would be a shame to allow you to go North to beg for what we should give you. You have many friends in St. Louis, and I am going to raise the $1,200 required among them. I have $200 put away for a present, am indebted to you $100. Mother owes you $50 and will add another 50 to it, and as I do not want the present, I will make the money a present to you. Don't start for New York now until I see what I can do among your friends." Okay. Oh, we have an ally, and I'm going to hope that it is just the goodness of her heart, not any sort of ulterior motive. And even though Elizabeth Keckley needed the signatures of 6 men, very specifically men, to vouch for her, white men at that, note that it is a white woman who was like, "Let's do this." So I am happy about the sisterhood that is happening here. Not to say that all sisterhoods with all things, like I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, suffrage and the clash that happened between white women and black women, but that's not what we're talking about right here. I will keep reading. Like a ray of sunshine she came, and like a ray of sunshine she went away. The flowers no longer were withered, drooping. Again they seemed to bud and grow in fragrance and beauty. Mrs. Le Bourgeois, God bless her dear good heart, was more than successful. The $1,200 were raised, and at last my son and myself were free. Free! Free! What a glorious ring to the word! Free! The bitter heart struggle was over. Free! The soul could go out to heaven and to God with no chains to clog its flight or pull it down. Free! The earth wore a brighter look, and the very stars seemed to sing with joy. Yes, free! Free by the laws of man and the smile of God, and heaven bless them who made me so. Hmm. Okay, we're going to stop there. What's coming up next are um, papers and letters pledging money to her. So we'll read those next time. It looks like the rest of the chapter is all of that. So hopefully I'll remember to say that's where we were. And that's it for this time. I hope you're enjoying it. I know I am. I'm Rashonda Cade, and this is Reading with Rashonda. Thank you.